And sometimes, here's one for you. You can look at the color of a deer's horns and figure some of that out. He's sticking more toward the pine thickets because he's got more resin and darker stuff versus the hardwoods, which may have a little lighter colored rack. A buck bedding, like you get toward November, December, you ever notice how horns a lot of times will get lighter in color? Have you ever noticed that on deer? What causes them to get light?
Sun bleaching.
Sun bleaching. Hey, he's bedding out in the fields, or he's bedding out in a short clear cut versus the pine thickets. So little that, not every time, because some racks just color up different, but I've watched that, how their racks will change color. Whitetail hunting, especially big bucks, is a game of odds. All three of us can kill this same buck in a different way with what we know. So if you want to be the best whitetail hunter, learn what you can about this scrape hunting. Learn what you can about the feeding. Learn what you can. Learn all of it. Then you can look at it and say, with the winds today, I may be better off right here.
How are you determining, I'm almost going to say backtracking or finding his path of travel if you can't always cut a track the whole way? Is it just analyzing the habitat and the edge cover and everything of more than likely how he's coming out of an area and navigating it and then connecting the dots between the sign? Or how are you connecting the dots there?
You will never, ever completely pattern a deer out unless you're on big block of private land. And, if you got a lot of trail cams and you can see them doing this and that. But in the old days, 40, 45 years ago, well, more than that, I would take topos, and one of my other degrees was in urban and regional planning geography. So I had access not just to topographical maps, what they had then, but then they took this. Have you seen the stereo photography they used to do, like World War II? And what they did, they actually have two cameras located in a plane, and it took photographs, stereo, from two different perspectives of that. Well, then you had this viewer like the 3D glasses at a movie theater, two lenses that you could look through over these photos, and it became one image, but it looked three-dimensional, just like what we've got on our phone now. So I did have advantage of that, and I took advantage of it looking at topo features. But, I had advantage, but you will, even where back then what we would do, like I would grid an area scouting it, and marking down on a copy of the topo, rub, scrape, rub, big rub on hemlock, that's Alfie. Rub, because this is another thing. Individual bucks a lot of times will have different trees they like to rub, different trees they like to scrape under. I've learned that too. And sometimes, here's one for you. You can look at the color of a deer's horns and figure some of that out. He's sticking more toward the pine thickets because he's got more resin and darker stuff versus the hardwoods, which may have a little lighter colored rack. A buck bedding, like you get toward November, December, you ever notice how horns a lot of times will get lighter in color? Have you ever noticed that on deer? What causes them to get light?
Sun bleaching.
Sun bleaching. Hey, he's bedding out in the fields, or he's bedding out in a short clear cut versus the pine thickets. So little that, not every time, because some racks just color up different, but I've watched that, how their racks will change color. And that big 12 point I showed you in there, he was starting to get white. He was bedding toward a clear cut. I don't know where the clear cut where he was at in it. I just knew where the big clear cut was at. So, but you can't ever figure out his whole pattern. But anyway, what I was going to tell you, we go through and mark this on a map. November 17th, November 20th, November blah, 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 October. And I'd write it down on like, what is it, acetate, the clear sheets that laid over. And so I'd have them dated in permanent markers. Well, I could lay these layers over my topo map and watch how patterns changed, just where certain things started to develop in certain times of the year. So we tried that and that, but I can't tell you. Whitetail hunting, here's a big thing. Whitetail hunting, especially big bucks, is a game of odds. It's a game of odds. So you take this stuff from the past and the things you identify, well, I know how to travel or hunt going to scrapes if I'm a scrape hunter. Okay, I know this buck's doing that. I'm going to set up this way on the scrape because I know this is what work. Well, then you may know, well, I know feeding routes, but I don't know really the scrapes. I'm not going to mess with this. But what I do know, I'm going to focus right here in what works best. Where I can take advantage of it here where he's doing that. You may be hunting bedding areas, and I don't know how to hunt scrapes. I don't know how to hunt these feeding areas or along the edge of fields or whatever, but I know this, him coming into the bedding, I've got tracks going in and out of this bedding area right here at this creek crossing right here. Well, I can get on the downside of that creek crossing going up the ridge to that bedding area. I've got down thermals in the morning. I've got there, and I've got tracks going both ways here. He's probably coming off into this hub. This is where he's coming down. I can set up right here. All three of us can kill this same buck in a different way with what we know. So if you want to be the best whitetail hunter, learn what you can about this scrape hunting. Learn what you can about the feeding. Learn what you can. Learn all of it. Then you can look at it and say, with the winds today, I may be better off right here. It's calm day, little overcast, even little mist. I might be they may come out a little bit in this feeding area early now. It's been a hot day, the wind's dying, it's turning cooler, evening thermal's going to be dropping off. I'm going to hunt the creek bottom today. So the more you learn of each of these areas, then you can bounce around, and you may know, well, he's here sometimes, he's here sometimes, he's here sometimes, and then pick for the conditions that you were in that day, pick out what's best for that day and take advantage of that spot. Don't hunt the creek crossing the same way on a hot day with a bad wind that it's going to be doing that, because then he's going to start off that ridge, smell you, and that's done. That'd be 2 weeks before he's back in that pattern. And here's another thing. When you blow a buck like that, you're talking about his pattern. Okay, if he's doing, a circular junket route, as I call them, this and that, he's going from point A to point B to point C to point D to here. Well, if he's coming through here and from point A to point B, you bust him at point B, and he got to go to point B to get to here. Well, to point C, you've probably screwed up point C and D, maybe. He may cut straight to D and then be off that whole pattern a little bit there, and he may avoid it for a few days till he walks in a week later and does a scent check of the area and makes sure you're not there. And something else with the deer, and I told you earlier, when you start asking me questions, there's 1,000 scenarios. And if there's one thing about trophy whitetail hunting that I believe more than anything else is you're your worst enemy, and the hunt is over way before you even start because of this reason. He's a prey species. What's a prey species? Number one defense, close range.
Here?
Eyes.
Oh, eyes.
That's what the eyes are for. A white-tailed deer's eyes are designed for movement. Movement. They've got, 240, 270 degree, but movement. Eyes. That's close range, right? Okay. Second, ears. Now, ears, the thing to remember there. Now, visually, you've got in front of you, right? Ears, 360 degrees. And are they listening? They're listening for long-range stuff, like, I don't know about that. So they're hearing that, but it's 360 all around them. That's covering their butt and their backside. Nose. You have acute smell, as I call it. That's like right here, hit you in the face with a baseball bat, skunk spray you in the face. And then you can smell your neighbor's perfume from the other end of the block when she gets out. Long range. Deer's number one threat assessment capabilities comes from the nose. Long range. People do not realize the significance of how deer, they think they're coming in this way and they're smelling stuff right here. Well, I've watched them over and over come off down here, walk down to here, trying to get to here, and you ask, why in the world are they doing that? Guess what they're doing? They're smelling up here, the scent to here. They move up to here, and maybe prevailing winds on top of the ridge are coming off. This way they're getting a drop in thermal to it, down to here. They come up top of the ridge to here to get prevailing winds coming down the ridge to here. And then what they do coming into something they usually J-hook using the nose. They are scent checking all the way in. And if you've ever listened to podcasts, then you can go back the first one I did with Ethan and them. I told him, I said, you're sitting on a stand, winds hitting you in the face, and deer off a quarter mile, half mile this way blowing. You're like, wonder who's over there, wonder who's coyote, over there. And they're smelling you. You're looking at the immediate wind where you're setting and not how it's traveling, the traveling of the wind pattern. And they do a long-range scent surveillance. So when you set up, you have to think about that, the long-range, how your scent's going to do, as much as you can. But the more you can start doing that, the more, and I say, sightings and opportunities to see big bucks will be. Once you get to that point, then you can start fine-tuning to the spot to where he's going to set his foot right there, that little space that he's vulnerable in.